All right. Hi, Dr. D. Good to uh, talk to you again from this platform. It's been a while since I've done this for diversity and social justice. Um, and yeah, I'm trying out some higher sound quality. Hopefully that helps your listening experience. So yeah, this last week's harm reduction debate, I think, got a lot of people's blood boiling a little bit, but I do think that was a really great exercise for us to kind of get us thinking about how we do actually view abstinence and harm reduction. Um, so one of your first questions that you asked us to answer was where on the continuum, where on the scale do we kind of see ourselves? One being abstinence only, 10 being full throttle harm reduction. Um, and I think I land somewhere like in a 7. Um, and the reason why I'm a 7 is for uh, multiple reasons. I think, you know, really up until like I moved here, I guess in 2021, I didn't even really know what harm reduction was. That was not something that was talked about in my day to day life, living in Florida, in the circles that I was in. Um, Abstinence only was uh, what I thought was the only way to recover from substance abuse. Um, but now that I know what it is and what it can actually look like and where it comes from, um, I have a greater understanding of that. And it's also helping me like build my hope for that. Um, and at the same time, um, seeing, how Measure 110 played out and different things like that, and how harm reduction has been used to um, I don't know, like make people lose faith in that option, even though that is the more like realistic option of like how to actually save lives. Um, I Right now I'm in a space where I don't think I ever fully want to be all the way at a 10, but I'm at a 7 just because like I don't have a lot of faith in the systems that kind of uphold abstinence values of kind of changing their minds. And in those types of moments, I try to remind myself that like it's the small actions that can create large change, and like what is my role that I'm coming into um, as a therapist going to be to create a more like harm reduction recovery space for people that I see. Um, and you know, yeah. So I think there's a lot of reasons why I'm kind of sitting at a 7. You know, from personal experience, I think that abstinence just flat out is really hard and oftentimes not really realistic for people. And I don't think it's always necessary. I think like that kind of all or nothing mentality, can be like a really daunting task for people. And I think sometimes it is necessary, and that's a necessary goal for people to have, is to live a sober life and um, have a sober lifestyle. And I think that there can be a lot of other steps in between that before that decision, feels like it has to be made. Um, and uh, yeah, I think coming from like that super abstinence only mindset, there's like so much shame around it because of the fear that like that kind of resource, like substance use being a resource for myself when I was younger to cope and stuff, could be like taken away from me. And also like I would have yeah, just a lot of shame and like misunderstanding around it. You know, I remember when I was younger, like in my teens, and um, that's kind of when my drinking was at its most. Um, I would always lie when they asked how much I was drinking, like at the doctor's appointments or stuff. And then in therapy, I wasn't even screened for like substance use. So it was something that it was either talked about in a very sterile situation where I felt like I would just be shamed for it if I admitted how much I was drinking, or it just wasn't brought up at all in spaces that it frankly should have been brought up in. So, um, yeah, I think implementing more options for people to remain safe is like how I view kind of what harm reduction really is all about. Whether that starts at prevention all the way to just like trying to keep somebody alive, I think we need to give people more options than just this like black or white, either you're using or you have to be completely sober. Um, and, you know, yeah, I think it's really important for me to kind of understand where my work will fall within that continuum. Um, Also, uh, before, moving to Portland and coming to school here and stuff, like I only had personal experience of substance abuse in my life. I didn't really have any educational knowledge of it or any really volunteer experience being around people that um, are in the more like severe categories of substance abuse. And it really wasn't until I started volunteering with houseless populations in Portland that I kind of saw harm reduction in action, like those needle exchanges and getting people Narcan and providing them with information for like safe sex and things like that. And it's definitely life saving work, but it is not glamorous by any means. Sometimes I think we can get kind of um, trapped in this bubble of like in the classroom what we think harm reduction should be and means, and yeah, it's not always pretty, like the needle exchanges are wonderful and should be there, and they're in a parking lot where people are actively using around the van. um there's been a few times that people have OD'd right in the parking lot where that needle exchange is, and like the ambulance had to come, and then there's not, so it's like it's not something that's going to like heal the whole world overnight type of thing. Like the what we're doing right now is like life saving, but it is um kind of like crisis management more than like long-term success. This is how we want our world to look necessarily, like um and so I think when I see situations like that, like I feel like those spaces are necessary, and I also want them to be a temporary solution, like I look at and I see like how could we have protected these people before we're in this state where we're in a parking lot late at night and it's 40 degrees and they don't have a house, and at least they have clean needles. Like how can we kind of give them more protections so this doesn't have to be their one space to have like some safety for them, um and yeah, so I think kind of seeing that and seeing how like challenging it is and how deep you have to dig to continue to have empathy and compassion for the world and have hope that you can change something for these people, um, really has shaped how I view harm reduction and how I want to implement that into my work. And then, yeah, lastly, like education has been a huge part. I've really appreciated the conversations we've had in class, and the readings we've done, um, and just like learning more about what drugs actually do to the brain and the body, both positive and negative side effects of that. And kind of, it's given me more of like a holistic approach to how substance use and abuse can exist in somebody's life, which has given me the ability to like deepen my compassion for the complexity of this issue, and kind of resist maybe the temptation of you know morally judging somebody for what they're doing, um, when that's just not my place, right? um, and so that all being said, I kind of am thinking about integration of what I've been learning, um, and how I want to integrate harm reduction into my work. You know, I definitely want my work, whether it is directly with substance use or not, but just altogether, I want it to be a really collaborative process. I think um, I want to use what I learn in this program and in continuing education to help, um, like give people better language and better tools to understand their own internal experiences, like that they already are very well versed in. And I truly believe that my clients will teach me a lot more about life and a lot more about how to be a good therapist than I could ever do by just like reading a book. Um, and so, yeah, within like recovery work, I really want it to be a realistic collaboration. I really want to try to like break the, you know, taboo of talking about substance use in a non-judgmental way, because I think a huge part of this work is just like trying to normalize that substance use exists, and exists on a variety of levels, and that shame shouldn't really have a place in how we're talking about it, right? It might exist, but we have to challenge that, um, because I do think that talking about it from the get, or at least giving clients the option to talk about it if they want to, um, can kind of is like, I think, a prevention strategy in a certain way, you know. I Okay, hopefully it didn't just cut out, but I think uh nobody should have to like reach a rock bottom in order to like finally feel like they need help with substance abuse. I think a lot of people can kind of flow in and out of using substances, or um kind of more behavioral addictions and things like that. Like it can flow in and out of people's lives, um and it can exist in someone's lives in a variety of ways. And I think, um yeah, like a real part of harm reduction that can be really effective is just like letting people talk about um, how they're engaging with substance uses on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be that their life has fallen apart. Now is when they need to get help, you know? Um, yeah. And I kind of want to try to reduce the notion of like labeling or condemning or shaming the individual that is telling me what's going on in their life. Um, So, yeah, my kind of like three main takeaways from what I've learned about harm reduction, how I view it, and how I want to integrate it into my future practice is that, I want to talk and ask about substance use without judgment. I really like the phrase that you use of like, you can't scare me, or you can't scare me away, right? Um, just tell me what's going on, and that's how we can work together, right? um and kind of like, I think a lot of that will um go into like my skill building and motivational interviewing and things like that, like exploring the pros and cons, exploring ambivalence, sitting in the ambivalence, and just really taking on like a curious approach of like, what about what they're using and how they're using it is helping them in one way or another, right? It may not be like the best coping skill, or it may come with a lot of other consequences, but it's something that they can rely on. And I think for a lot of people in their life, there's not a lot of things that they can trust and rely on. And substance use can be a very reliable coping skill. So it's not my place to kind of shame them out of that, right? I just want to be curious of like, what else do they think could work, or you know how do they really feel about it, right? um and I also really want to increase autonomy for clients to make their own choices about how they're using and what they're using, and just give them safe options to uh uh you got a Sonia cameo, um to use however they want to use, and I'll just try to give them options to keep them safe if they want to take that, right? um I think that's what a lot is, harm reduction is talked about a lot, of like, we want to give people that use substances and have behavioral addictions a voice and how it is being treated. And I want continuous input about that. I um, do not expect to become like an expert in anybody's lives. So, and lastly, a key takeaway for me is like, I want to try to implement like realistic prevention strategies before someone hits like a quote rock bottom. I think I'm really interested in that. I'm interested in like, what can, like, prevention actually look like for people? Um, does that involve like huge giant system things, right, where like if people weren't as stressed out and didn't work as much and didn't feel like, weren't as traumatized as much, would they use less substances? Maybe. Can I achieve that? We'll see. But what if we could actually give younger people and adults like realistic expectations of what substance use can look like, and kind of give them more signs to look for when maybe it's kind of getting out of control for themselves and stuff like that, and how they shouldn't feel like they have to wait so long before they get help, and that it doesn't have to be a shameful experience to like adjust their lifestyle in a way that aligns better with them, whether that includes pure abstinence of substances or moderation or whatever. I think yeah, I'm really interested in that in between stage, before we get to just like, we're just trying to save someone's life. um, so yeah, thanks for listening. Hope this microphone worked. Yeah, thanks.